this is kind of revisiting a topic I have talked about once when I talked about pessimism and balancing that with optimism and stuff like that. I didn't re-listen to the conversation. I know this conversation is different enough that I don't have to go back and actually listen to it, but I know that I've talked about something similar before, just not similar enough to not warrant revisiting it. So, yeah, optimism is really difficult for me, or not easy. Um, I was just thinking about it a lot today. It's been on my mind in the past week or two, more so because of a conversation that I had with somebody in person, and I don't know, and I've just been more aware of it since that conversation as like something I've always been aware of, but it's just how it affects my life now and what I can possibly do about it. And what I notice about it is, just I'm in time and place right now in my life where that's something for some reason that I can focus on in a different way and try and see what I can do with it. I've always really been a negative person. I mean, it's really difficult to say that. As soon as I was aware of what pessimism and optimism were, I feel like I was like, yeah, I'm pretty pessimistic. I have always tried to say, rather than say, yeah, I'm a pessimist, that sounds like that's what I want to be. And it's not an enjoyable way to be. It's not fun or easy. It's just, I prefer to say, like, I'm a realist because that sounds like it's a choice, right? Like, I am this is really difficult. Like, I don't like saying I am this and that's it when it comes to being pessimistic, optimistic, you know. However, overwhelmingly, I look at things through the lens of what would be pessimistic, or I filter the things that I see through that lens. I don't know how to explain it in that sense right now, but I mean, if I say that I'm a realist, it's like I look at the reality of the situation, or I take in, I observe so much of the whole picture. I think that's what contributes to the realism part. That is one of those things, like, that's the way I am, and I don't really know how to change that. It's in my nature that I've always really been attuned to seeing the whole picture. Obviously not 100%. I'm not perfect, and it's just that some people end up only being able to see a little part of this or a little part of that, and maybe that part is inherently negative or positive that is overwhelmingly the thing that they see in that scenario most of the time, whereas I feel like I don't know, call it the artist's eye, I don't know what it is, but it seems like from a very young age I could just observe the wholeness of the situation. People that know me in my personal life now know that, like, it's also something that is practiced over time, and I think it grew out of my anxiety, where I just see stuff, and like I said, it's like a practiced skill or trait after a while, because naturally I think I'm really observant and see things just in my regular day in my life, and I see all parts of it. I'm already repeating myself and going in circles, but it's also a practice thing, because in order to not be so anxious and stressed, I want to control my surroundings, which means I have to see my surroundings. I have to be 10 steps ahead. I have to think about, I'm going on a trip, what is everything that I need for that trip? I don't want to be there and realize I forgot something, and then, or last minute, realize that I forgot to do this thing or that thing, and then have to scramble and figure it out and whatever. I like to be really organized and well prepared, and it's definitely tied to my anxiety. Before I even realized anxiety was a thing for me, I was definitely trying to cope with it by over-preparing, organizing, being detail-oriented when it comes to that kind of stuff. Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with seeing a fuller picture, and seeing all angles of a picture of all these things that could go, I wouldn't say right or wrong, but I mean, like, usually whatever could go right, or whatever the optimistic thing is or the positive thing is too obvious, or that's wrong to say, too obvious. It's just not worth noting a lot of the time for me. It's not like, I'm like, yeah, things could go awesome, and that's a really general thing, like, things could go awesome in so many ways that I'm not going to bother thinking about all the awesome things that could happen, or the specifics of how awesome they could go. It makes more sense to be like, hey, let's get very specific about the things that could go wrong, so that way we can try and find ways to combat them before they're a reality. It's like something that I do in arguments all the time, which I know is really frustrating, but it's like I if I'm arguing my position, I can foresee the person's rebuttal most times, and I try and provide evidence against what they're going to say before they get a chance to say it. It's like that. Where if I can try and over prepare and organize and everything else to the point where it won't be an issue, like why wouldn't I do that? Like I can see all the potential negatives in very specific, you never know what life's going to throw at you, but I mean this is a situational thing, right? Like it's like, oh, we're going on a trip. Okay, what are the things that we can prepare for? I'm not going to think of every single thing, but be like, oh, well, make sure we get gas maybe the night before. Make sure we have like an extra jerry can just in case if we're going on a long trip where there's few and far, whatever. There's like so many things like, oh, it's winter. Let's winter-proof the vehicle. Let's have some blankets. Make sure we have a spare tire and the tools that we need. Let's get some snacks. Let's like make sure that for this long trip I have what I need. Like phone charger and like car charger, whatever, right? Like I need my contacts. I need my mouth guard. I need this and that. There's all these things you can't prepare for. And there's a lot of things you can't prepare for at all. I can't prepare for them. I can't see every possible thing. I wasn't planning, maybe for a 50-car pileup on the way to Calgary, right? Like I wasn't thinking that was going to happen, and now maybe I'm sitting there and for 5 hours and I didn't think of that, and now I ran out of gas. Like I don't know. That's the whole point, is that I don't know everything that's going to happen, but I want to prepare for what I can. So anyway, this is like a daily thing for me though. This is just like the way that I live life. I don't spend. It's so automatic for me that I don't feel like it's like I'm super OCD about it. Like there's like when it's time to go and plan something, it's time to go and plan it, and then I get some paper and pencil out. I make a list or do it on my phone or whatever. I talk about it with people if I need to. But just in my daily life, like my filter is just always on as to observing things and just the experiences that I have in a day. For some reason, it's just the things that stick are the things that are affecting me negatively. They just seem to weigh heavier in my heart for longer, and it just sticks. And the things that I express that to people, whereas the things that are good I don't always express. And this is something that when I was having this conversation with someone that I realized, like, okay, well, like it's like in my artwork, something I've known about writing for a long time. When I was writing prolifically in high school, it was like 95% negative, if you want to call it that. It was bad feelings or things I was trying to work out or whatever. We talked about external processing before and how, and sometimes by having like this conversation or whatever, by doing something, by putting it out there physically or like by voicing it, like literally voicing it, that I get these things out, I can process the things that I'm trying to figure out. So by writing stuff, it's like, well, I wasn't trying to figure out good things. Those things don't need to get figured out. Like, like it doesn't need the work. Having a really nice, fluffy, warm, fuzzy feeling usually doesn't need to be worked out. It's just there, and you can enjoy it while it's there. And this is where I know I run into trouble, because sometimes even that I can't enjoy by itself. A lot of times I can take the good for what it is and that's it, but other times I feel like I can't. And I had an experience today, which I talked about in like the upcoming vlog, just at school, where it was like, I'm trying to make it really short, but I mean like, there's a student, I had never taught that student, I knew that student last year when I was on my part-time contract, but I didn't ever teach them, but they knew that I, was the art teacher. Their older sister I had taught for their grade 12 year, like, so there was a connection there, like, oh yeah, my sister like says such good things about you and whatever, and I was like, oh, that's really nice, that makes me feel good, whatever. I haven't taught at that school for like a year, but I sub there now, and from time to time, and I was subbing the past 2 days at that school, and this student today came up to me with their sketchbook, and they were like, hey, I just wanted to show you this, and like, whatever, I just thought you'd like it because I know that you're like this art teacher and stuff, and my sister like still talks like all this like positive stuff about you. She didn't say it in those words, but I was like, really still? She's like, yeah, like she still talks about you sometimes. I was like, oh wow, that makes me feel really warm and fuzzy. But the thing is that like it didn't just end there. Like it could have just ended there. Like the student was awesome. They were showing me their sketchbook. I was genuinely interested. I thought the stuff they were doing was really cool. They asked me even for like for like assistance, like what would you do with this thing? And I was like happy to be able to be in my element with a student that was appreciative and grateful and full of positive energy. But at the same time, it makes me sad because that's not my day-to-day anymore. So like, it's really difficult for me to maintain a level of happiness because I had a really rough day today anyway because of yesterday and today being in the same classroom. There was like a specific class that was really difficult to manage, and so having them 2 days in a row was even more difficult. So like, I wasn't in the best spirits today anyway. That shouldn't have affected that thing, but I mean like, that's not even what I'm getting at. The thing is that like, subbing just drains me. Subbing is really difficult because it's a 50-50. It's such a gamble as to whether the classes you're going to get are going to be cooperative and productive, quiet, whatever, listen to instruction, or if they're going to be openly defiant. It's just really difficult when it's not your class. I also don't get a lot of fulfillment out of just being there temporarily and say peace, see you later, because I don't get a chance to build relationships. So this instance was like kind of building a relationship that I kind of started last year, and it was positive and nice and wonderful, and I got compliments and yay, great. But there's this sadness in me that I'm like, yeah, it just reminds me that that's not my day-to-day. That reminds me that I'm not doing what I want to be doing. I'm not in the position I want to be in. And that is subbing. I don't want to be subbing. So, I mean, alternatively to other things, it's arguably better, except there's no guaranteed income, so then it makes other jobs more appealing that I would never want to do as a career, but at least I would have guaranteed income. This is going off topic. The point is, it's very hard for me to be stable at a happy place. Because even when things happen that should make me happy, and they did for a few minutes, there are times where my mind just goes to this place of like, yeah, but my heart hurts because I'm not doing what I want to be doing. This is just reminding me of this happy thing that I don't actually have long term. It's just a little thing. This conversation could go into other places like ignorance is bliss. I don't know if it will fully get there, but I mean, there's just, part of this is wiring for me, like the way that I'm wired, or whatever, I want to use that phrase. It doesn't mean that I can't rewire. So like, there's a part of my nature, there's a part of my nurture, and I can nurture myself into being more positive and optimistic. I really think that that is true. I can filter things differently. I can train my brain to create new synapses, to react to new stimuli in a specific way. It will take time. I believe that that is possible and that I can do it. But there still is part of my nature that will always be there, where this will be a difficult thing for me, whereas for other people, maybe all they see is the positive stuff. And I don't think I really finished wrapping up what I was trying to say before. Was like being, if it's in my nature to be a realist, because I am seeing all parts of it, I'm seeing the reality, that should be neutral. And then you should have a choice as to think about the reality you see in a positive light or a negative light. Unfortunately, the why I fit into this, pessimistic, negative category is because usually I'm expressing, or I'm seeing, I'm holding on to, I don't know how to explain it. If I see all these things, what I'm emphasizing is the negative stuff, because that's the stuff I want to control, and that's the stuff I want to try and reverse or try to prepare for or whatever, if these are potentials. And if they're experiences that I have, that's difficult. Like today I had good and bad experiences. And like, to me, it's really difficult for me to not express the bad stuff, because then I'm just holding it in. I like to complain. I like to rant about my day. I like to say all that stuff. I mostly express the negative stuff because sometimes the good stuff, for some reason, it just doesn't, like, I don't want to say it's not worth noting, but it doesn't, like, help me as much to express, or I don't think it does, or it's not natural for me to express it. I don't know why that is. When it comes to some things, I feel like talking about good stuff is just like bragging. So there's that too, because like yesterday and today there were good things that happened in my school day, and I did mention them to someone, but I felt weird about mentioning them, because I was like, oh, yesterday I had a really cool like moment where I problem solved the situation, and I turned a really potentially crappy bad situation with this class into a much more manageable one, and I was proud of myself. Saying that to someone just sounds like, hey, look at me, I did a good thing. And it's weird to say that sometimes. Like, sometimes it's like, man, I really love this painting. And that doesn't feel weird to me to say, but with teaching and stuff, sometimes it does. Or like this student that talked to me today, it's like sharing that stuff is like, yeah, look at how great I am. Look at how I can have an influence on these students and like make positive connections and stuff like that. But it feels weird sometimes to say that because it feels like bragging. And speaking about teaching and using these experiences and metaphors or symbols or what have you to talk about being pessimistic or optimistic, there was even a practice while I was doing my internship and getting my degree in education where they said, like, hey, if you ever have to you're going to have to make phone calls to parents at a certain time, whether it's like, a couple weeks before report cards, or you're just going to check in every once in a while, depending on what the school's policy is too. Like, it's a mandatory thing. You have to phone X amount of parents to tell them, hey, just wanted to check in, your kid's not doing so well, blah, 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 blah. That some people, as like certain teachers, have like their own policy that they say, okay, for every 5 bad or negative calls, I'll have 1 good one, because I need that. Like, mentally, emotionally, I need to have that, because it's nice to say nice things about a student. It's nice for a parent to get those calls too. And it is a good practice to have. And that's kind of leading into what I'm saying is, like, I can do some rewiring to an extent. It's just really difficult. It's very difficult for me to stay happy, stay optimistic. Man, staying happy, I feel like that should have been a different topic. Like, but that's something that I didn't even realize until I had this conversation. I feel like this is one of the most successful conversations I've had in a while. I don't know why, but it just is. And like, because I'm learning stuff. So yeah, staying optimistic or trying to be optimistic in the first place, super difficult for me to do. It's, oh man, I wish it wasn't. And I don't want to say that I'm prone to like depression. I had years, a big chunk of high school that was me being depressed, but like never any clinical depression diagnosis or anything like that. And I've had ups and downs, and I've never stayed so low really for a significant period of time that I would categorize it as clinical depression. I don't want to take away from people who actually suffer from that, but I'm definitely prone to just whatever. It is stressful, and anxiety and stuff, like, it weighs on me and affects my mental, emotional, physical health, as negativity does and holding that does, and anxiety and stress do weigh on a person and physically or affect your physical health. Like, this is documented and proven in studies, and that's just what I live with. And I don't want to live that way. I don't want to live with that. I know there's things I can do to help me be more positive and optimistic and whatever, and not hold on to that stuff. And I guess this conversation reminded me of the fact that physical exercise is something that I know helps me. I need to make time for that. And maybe part of it is just me feeling like I haven't rode my bike for like a month now because of weather and also because of time. Mostly it was weather. I had time, I was going to make time, whatever, and then the weather did not cooperate. And then in the past week or so, the weather's been up and down, but it's been a little more stable. Like, it's cold now, but I still should get on my bike and just check things out. And then I don't have time sometimes when the weather is aware. I haven't made time. Anyway, that's one thing I know I can do to help me battle my nature. Because if I get chemicals flowing in the morning, I've proven this to myself. If I exercise in the morning before school, I have way more patience. I am so much more optimistic and happy and positive at the beginning of the day, and usually it carries out for the majority of the day. I can deal with regular stress much easier. But that's the thing. That's like, my nature isn't to wake up and have that. It's something that I actually have to do, and like, this is like a physical thing that I have to do in order to feel better. And that's just the way that it is for me. That's my handicap, if you want to call it. That's my thing that I have to compensate for that other people sometimes just wake up with. And again, I don't know all the reasons why I cling to the negative so much. Sometimes it's just like, I don't need to express the positive sometimes, or I feel like I don't, and I need to try to balance that out. Like I said, and if I see the situation as a whole and in the realism of it, then I need to make an effort to express the positive and optimistic so much more. And maybe I will start focusing on that more, and maybe seeing it more automatically, because the thing is, I see the negative outcomes automatically. I don't see the positive ones very specifically automatically. It's just a general idea that things could go very well, and I need to exercise that more. Yeah, that's kind of that conversation. I really feel like whatever. It was a good reminder for me, and I feel like I got a lot out of it. if you have any mental exercises or anything, I would love to hear it, because other than like the physical exercise thing, for me that's really important. I know meditation helps my stress levels, which I have not been doing, even though I committed to it again in like the summer and just didn't do it. So I need to do that. I don't know if that really helps me be like a more like whatever. Reducing stress will be obviously good and positive, but what I mean by like positive and optimistic, I don't really know if it was affecting that. Exercise definitely did. Anyway, I don't know. If you've got any tips and tricks that you would like to extend my way, I would be happy to hear it. With that, I will see you on another time. And yeah, that was good. I really enjoyed that.